All right. Welcome back into the podcast. And I am super excited for this one. I'm with my guy, Asher Smith. Super excited for this. Asher, how we feeling? March Madness is finally here. Selection Sunday happened. Whew, this is awesome, man. How you feeling, man?
Feeling great, man. Last week was everything I needed. Got me hyped. I think I saw more basketball than I had all year combined. I'm caught up on all the teams, but man, I'm excited. How are you feeling, man? You better be riding high.
Dude, I'm riding so high. And I mean, like Oakland basketball in the tournament, going against Kentucky, it's going to be a fun one, man. And we'll get into that one and all that. But dude, March Madness being here, man, like it's easily the best time of the year, 100%.
Yeah, definitely. I remember from my time at Michigan, March Madness matchups were just like nothing you prepared for during the year at all. Like you got into such a rhythm during the conference where like you knew every opponent, you knew their starting lineup, you knew their depth chart, and you knew how they played. You watched them play against other teams, and now you're going against a team that you might have never seen or thought you were going to come across the entire year, and it just
Yep.
switches gears. Like it's so much fun. You get to see matchups, out of conference that you would never see. Other sports just don't do it the same way. They don't do it justice. March Madness is different, and it's going to be awesome this year.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited. And it seemed like there was a lot of a lot of Lenardi's bracket was, and it was just different. It was just completely different. Like a lot of people wanted to see Indiana State in, which made complete sense. Like they were a great team to watch throughout the year. But I also saw a lot of like interesting seeding, like UAB moving up to 12, like kind of shocked there. Stuff like that. Duquesne went up to 11, and like Duquesne wasn't that great during the season. So it's things like that seeding kind of shocked me a little bit. But that's what makes March Madness so fun. So, it's exciting stuff.
Yeah, agreed. The bid stealers this year were, incredible. Five
Cool.
bids stolen. We had two Big East teams drop out that people thought would make it. Big East is down to what, three teams, I believe, like
Something
something
like that. Yeah.
that everyone thought they would have double going into the season. So the conference tournaments did their job. They made it worth. That's why we play them. People are saying that with these mega conferences they'll be obsolete. Blah blah. Like this is why we do it, because teams like NC State can go on these runs, and we'll talk about them more. But just super fun to watch.
Yeah, no, I mean, crazy conference tournaments. Like, I was so happy we did a pod before those just to get everybody caught up, because if you tuned into those conference tournaments, holy cow, it was just flat out insane. So I'm super excited for that. And let's just get right into it. Let's get right into it.
Sounds good.
Let's talk about the East to start. Okay. So I'm looking at the bracket now. I got it pulled up on my phone. Is there a game that just sticks out to you right away? Is there just one game that you're like, okay, I'm excited to see this the most?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of potential second round matchups that are exciting to watch for sure. But I think, going off of this bracket that we got, first, I would say that the Morehead State and Illinois game is very intriguing to me, because a lot of
Okay.
people are high on Morehead State. They had a great end to last season, and there's always that 3-14 matchup that gets people initially. And there's really no one hotter in my mind than Illinois right now. So
Yeah.
a lot of people probably have them going farther than they originally thought. Illinois, a team, Brad Underwood's their coach, who has never made it to the Sweet 16 before. This is probably one of the most talented teams he has. That initial 3-14 is going to be very interesting. In terms of who I loved sticking out of this one, would obviously be UConn. So the initial
Yeah.
UConn versus potentially FAU, San Diego State, a couple of rematch opportunities there from the Final Four. That top of the bracket is going to be probably where everyone's eyes are at, and I think UConn is definitely going to have the most attractive matchups against whoever they play. They're going to be ready for it. Them as the number one overall seed when people thought it might go to Houston, North Carolina, Purdue, Arizona, even. The fact that they then stuck it out and got that number one seed, I think that
Mhm.
UConn, put themselves in a place to succeed. What are you looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely. Like, I remember watching this. So at the arena, we had like a whole setup, right, for the tournament, like just ready to hear our name called. And the South region went first. And we were looking at these teams and we were like, holy cow, this region's stacked, like absolutely stacked. And we were happy just not to be there. Because like it's like, geez, like some of these is like, wow, these are some crazy teams in here. They're like looking at this, you got UConn, who's clearly the best team, like by far, 100%. And then FAU played a really tough schedule, and their conference was really, really good this year. So they're a really good 8 seed. And we saw it last year. They made the run while they were a 9 seed. They're
Right.
going to be flat out dangerous. And I mean, don't sleep on Northwestern either. Northwestern was good this year. They were really good. I loved watching Boo Booey play, and they gave Purdue some really really close games. And then looking at some of the other seeding, Auburn was looked like one of the most dangerous teams in that SEC tournament. Super hot or insane, and I was shocked to see because I wasn't sure if this Auburn team would be like this dominant. The SEC tournament, they just totally ran through it, and it was really impressive. So Auburn impressed me there, and then Illinois, like you were talking about, probably the hottest team in the Big Ten. Terrence Shannon just went on a rampage in that. They were absolutely scary there. And then I didn't even mention Iowa State's your 2 seed. Iowa State just won the Big 12. They beat Houston by 30 points in the Big 12 championship game. I talked about how much I loved Iowa State on the last podcast. This is a crazy bracket, flat out crazy. And I'm shocked that they put it all in UConn's bracket, but I'm really looking forward to see who comes out on top. And my initial gut reaction was that nobody could beat UConn, but now I'm looking at this bracket and like, maybe somebody can, and I'm not sure there. So talk to me about who you see like on the top. Is We don't have to talk about UConn too much because we talked about them a lot. Who's the team that you would be most scared of if you're UConn?
Yeah, definitely. I think that when this bracket came out, I was thinking, okay, not a lot of upsets, not a lot of upsets, but that's because these top teams are so good, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
who UConn doesn't want to face would be a hot Iowa State team
Okay.
because there's a difference between playing Iowa State right now and playing them after 4 straight wins. And Houston is someone who can tell you what that's about, right?
Yeah.
Iowa State can get that momentum that no other team can. And it's because of good coaching. It's because of great guard play. They have it all. But honestly, it's just March. It's just tournament success, and they're built for that. So if they, UConn and Iowa State go on this collision path, that's who I would not want to see in terms of a matchup against UConn. I think the one game we didn't even talk about is probably the most exciting first round game, and that's Washington State Drake. I know you
Yeah.
mentioned Drake on this
Yes.
podcast already. That one honestly might make it even tough for UConn to face someone like Illinois or Iowa State, which is crazy to think about. But that team has more than one upset in them. It's
It's
going to be
true.
super fun to watch. I would say, don't go against me if it's UConn, San Diego State, Illinois, and Iowa State. I would probably be rooting against Iowa State if I'm UConn.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And you mentioning Drake, like I love that. I was about to ask you who your upset team was in this bracket, and I think it's clearly Drake. Like I talked about it on the podcast. I talked about it in November when we were in the Cayman Islands on the podcast as well. Drake's awesome. Like so good. Tucker DeVries is a monster. And the fact of the matter is just so the listeners know, Oakland held them to 6 points, Tucker DeVries, and they still beat us. Like they got a team there, and they're really, really talented, sitting at that 10 seed spot. Indiana State was no joke either, and they were able to win that game. They wouldn't have made the tournament if they didn't win that game, which is flat out huge, and they're going to be flat out scary. I actually think Drake, like, going against Iowa State, is just going to be a tough matchup, and I feel like it's the most upset team that people are going to pick because they do have that talent, and DeVries' dad is such a great coach as well. And like Drake has been super talented, and they haven't gotten that tournament win yet. But I think they're going to beat Washington State in this first round, give Iowa State a thriller. But I think Iowa State can sneak out of it and win that game. Do you think Drake could get past Iowa State or not really?
I think that it's very interesting because of the interstate matchup and the fact that, like all
Yeah.
eyes in basketball are going to be on it because it is two teams that, that you thought would have upset potential in March. Iowa State, probably a couple of people's Final Four as upsetting UConn. Drake has a couple of people's Sweet 16 as upsetting Iowa State. So it's going to draw a lot of attention. I think, if Iowa State, honestly, if they get out of the first round, they're going to get the train rolling, and that's going to be hard to stop. Like they need to, get their feet in front of them, but like once it's there, it's just like you can't game plan for it. They can
Yeah.
blow teams out by 30, 40 points. So that's going to be tough for Drake. They did do a great job beating Indiana State. They're not a new name, right? They've been in the tournament before, so definitely not disrespecting them, but going to be tough for Iowa State to, I think, face any opposition in those first 2 rounds.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any other upsets in this region that you want to talk about or any other specific game?
Yeah, I think that Duquesne is an interesting pick because
Okay.
they're probably the lowest 11 seed in my mind, and that's no fault of their own. They made a crazy run to win that Atlantic 10,
Yeah.
knocked out a couple people that probably should have been in it, right? Like Richmond and VCU.
Yep.
So that was very interesting. But it's the more interesting thing for it is that They play in, I believe, the second game of the tournament on Thursday, which I know is a
Okay.
wild way to value, who your upsets are. But if you can
Yeah,
think of every time your bracket's been busted, for me,
that's
it's within the
true.
first 5 games.
That's
And
true.
the fact that Duquesne gets that early one when no one really BYU hasn't seen other 6 teams play yet. Like,
Yeah.
what is like kind of the strategy against these upsets? I think that Duquesne could probably keep it going, but again, they might have used that all up in that 8-10 tournament.
Yeah. No, I like that one. I like that one. I think for this one, I did pick Duquesne because I
Okay.
think they could definitely give BYU some trouble. They're not my favorite pick in the world just because I don't like when teams get super hot like before the tournament because I'm just not sure like and I
Right.
respect the A10 enough to be like okay that's a real conference. So when those like bigger conferences that are like stacked, those teams get hot, then I get a little nervous. But I mean like Duquesne and BYU, it's just BYU's an unknown. A lot of people don't know, and I feel like Duquesne's going to be a really popular upset pick as well. I feel like the two most popular would probably be Duquesne and Drake, like we were talking about over there,
Definitely.
and both very talented for sure. The one that I really like and is going to shock a lot of people is Yale over Auburn.
Really.
I'm all in on that one, and that's just because of the fact that Yale really shouldn't be here. It's just the truth. Like if you watch that Ivy League tournament, some of the games that they won, like Brown missing free throws at the end to lose that game. It was like wow, like Yale shocked the world, and Princeton was the clear favorite in that, and then Brown beat them. And people were like, wow, and I was mad at myself because we picked conference tournament winners, and I had Yale and then switched to Princeton last minute. So I'm mad at myself still. But with Yale, man, they're a great shooting team, and I just fall in love with those teams that can really, really shoot the ball. And Yale's one of those teams. And the thing with Auburn, it was what I was talking about earlier. They got really hot in that SEC tournament. You tend to cool down when it hits March Madness and it starts going to your head a little bit. I think this could happen with this Auburn team. So if they don't, like, they could win this game, but the thing is I think it's going to be close no matter what because I do feel like Auburn would have all the pressure on them, and if Yale's hitting threes to start the game, that could be a scary team right there. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think this East is full of conferences that produce Cinderella teams, which is
Yeah,
a funny category, but like Drake, right out of the Missouri Valley, classic one that can go even to the Sweet 16. Yale, like you said, they've been there before. They're not like a crazy pick to me, but it was
yeah,
Princeton's conference to lose, right? And people were probably going to pick Princeton over Auburn if that was the case here. So why
hmm,
not Yale, right? And then Duquesne and UAB, right? Two of the larger conferences out east that somehow these two were able to win. They're not the best team. They didn't have the best non-conference, but they somehow won it. And now they're like right where they are. So it's really tough to go against some upsets here. It's just then there's UConn on up top, and it's
I
like
know.
does it even really matter? So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Probably a lot of brackets broken in this first East or first couple games in the East here because I really don't know which one's going to be the upset pick. But I think any of these top 4 seeds get hot, it's going to be a fun Sweet 16 Elite Eight.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, let's move into the South. We'll give our East pick after we do South. We'll give those picks
Perfect.
together. But talking about the South a little bit, looking at some of the matchups. I mean, dude, it's another great like region. It's awesome, and this is Houston's region, correct? I think I was on the West first. There we go. I'm on the South now. There we go. Um,
Correct.
and I'm looking at this region, and I'm like, man, you got Houston, you got teams like Wisconsin that are scary. Kentucky's awesome. Talking about that. And Marquette, you got Kolick. It's a little bit weaker than the other region for sure. We talked about how stacked that was. What matchup kind of stands out to you from this region?
Yeah, I mean, besides the behemoth of Kentucky versus Oakland that everyone's going to be tuning in for, I would say that this region is very interesting because I would agree that it's kind of top heavy like UConn's is. I don't think Houston, in terms of net ranking and other statistics for the 1 seeds, making the Final Four, Houston's kind of got it again this year. But
Yeah.
people might be a little bored with them. Like they've had this path before, they've had Final Four success, they've lost early. Like we really don't know which
Yeah.
Houston team is going to show up. So that leaves a lot of room for these other teams to kind of emerge. People would think that Marquette's maybe a high 2 seed, Kentucky's a high 3 seed, Duke's a high 4 seed, teams that were probably on the border between going, that seed below and seed up. So But the same thing is they're all big names, right? These are all March names. They're very exciting to watch.
Yeah.
I don't think that anyone's going to be picking against them early. It's just we really don't know which version's going to show up, right? Which Kentucky are we going to get? Which Duke are we
Yeah.
going to get? It's going to be very interesting to see. Initial matchup I'm looking at is Texas Tech, NC State. I think NC State's got a team that's playing really well right now. They've made some big moves throughout the regular season to kind of get back on track, and they've kind of found their offensive identity. Texas Tech, part of the best conference in basketball, in my opinion, with the Big 12. They've been battle tested. They've played in games that NC State probably hasn't gotten to play in yet, and those
Yeah.
are those March postseason type games early. So I think that might give them an advantage where a lot of people might be picking NC State and not really realizing what Texas Tech had to go through to even be a 6 seed. That's
Uh-huh.
probably going to be the most exciting matchup for me to watch.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at this, and for me, it's going to the 5-12, 4-13, and that's with Wisconsin, James Madison, and you got Duke, Vermont.
Yep.
And Vermont's scary. They're always scary. They're a great shooting team, and I was watching their conference championship a little bit, and I was just really impressed with how dominant they are. I mean, they're just flat out dominant in that conference, and they're going to show up and give Duke a flat out game. And Duke's here to go far. Last year it was a complete disappointment losing in that second round. And it's like, okay, this is a Duke team that has to make it far. So I think that Duke Vermont game is going to be fun. I'm not completely sold on Vermont winning that game, but I do think Vermont's going to definitely make it a game. And then the James Madison, Wisconsin. James Madison is so good. Finishing 30-3 this year, like that is just unbelievable. And then Wisconsin came off of a tough loss in Big Ten championship. They were playing a lot better, a lot more cohesive in that Big Ten championship. They started out really, really hot, and then they cooled off a little bit near the end of the season, and then turned it up a little bit for that tournament. So I think this is going to be another close game, but I do think James Madison is that classic 12 seed that's just really, really good. And I think they're going to come up and beat Wisconsin. I actually have them over them. What do you think about these two games and where it can line up?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that the four teams that you just mentioned are all teams that people probably have circled on their upset watch, right? James Madison obviously playing offense, that is going to be rewarded in March, right? High volume of shots, a lot of point scorers, only lost 3 games. Same with Vermont. They're a team that's made it, 7 years in a row, something like that. And they're still looking for that first win, which is interesting. I think that 3 of these teams, Wisconsin, James Madison, Vermont, probably played themselves into too high of a seed. What do I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that? Vermont's usually a 15 seed that we see come in, right? A little weaker conference. They take care of business. They get the 15. They get to play the 2 seed. Now they're playing the 4 seed, right? A little more upset potential. Vermont did that for themselves. That could
Yeah.
be very interesting. James Madison, same deal, right? First year in that new conference. They played themselves all the way up to a 12, right?
Yeah.
So these are teams that haven't been here before, but also have, because of their own success, have given themselves a chance to win. Wisconsin, I think a lot of people had at like an 8 or a 9 going to that Big Ten
Mm-hmm.
tournament, maybe going into that last weekend of February. Now they're up to a 5. It's going to be very interesting. It's going to be fun games. I think all of that makes sense for Duke to make a run, right? All these teams
Yeah.
have played themselves up. They are great teams. They are playing well. We should give them the respect, but they might have played outside of their own comfort level. Now Duke can finally take care of business. A team that people had top 10 going into the year, now a 4 seed in a region, or I'd say a bracket that's pretty wide open until you get to Houston. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree 100%. Um, I want to talk about Oakland, Kentucky. Okay, I want to zero in on it a little bit. Tell me your thoughts before I give a little bit of my thoughts. I'm not going to go too in depth because I don't want to, and I don't want to give too much away. But I do want to talk about it. So talk to me a little bit about what you see from this game.
100%. I think that Oakland is just like those teams I mentioned, where this conference has produced 16 seeds before. It's produced 15s. Oakland played itself all the way up to a 14 seed, right? They did
Mm-hmm.
the right things in March. They took care of business. They were projected to win and they did it, right? These are things that come from a team that's experienced, that's graduated, that knows that March is their goal. They weren't playing for the Horizon League championship. They won the Horizon League championship, but they were playing for that March, that tournament berth. So I
Yeah.
think it's going to be very fun. Obviously, you got a lot of people behind Oakland. Kentucky is a tough draw. Like there are a lot of 3 seeds out here that I think had a little more injuries going into March, or really maybe a little prone to upsets. Kentucky has been like strengthening throughout the year, which scares me a little bit. I think that the power dynamic between Dillingham and their other guard, I forget his name, with the longer Shepard, is going to
Yeah.
be kind of just tough to keep in front. The one thing I do like is that Kentucky was playing the SEC all year, right? And
Mhm.
obviously that's one of the better, deeper conferences that we talked about. But that's a conference where you have to kind of abandon your defense in order to score more points than the other team, or else you're just not going to be able to play, right?
Yep.
Oakland then might be able to initiate a defense that they haven't seen before and allow Kentucky to kind of play themselves out of the games with bad 3-point shots, possessions that go too long, right?
Yep.
Solid rebounding, solid defense. So I think the opportunity for Oakland is there. The experience for Oakland is there. The point scoring in the paint is there. It's just, do we see a Kentucky that shoots 40% for three, or do we see a Kentucky that shoots 20?
Yeah, and that's what I talked about with Kentucky on the last podcast, and that's why I thought they were overrated because they could be either team. We don't know what kind of team we're going to see. And the one thing that I keep going back on is the fact that, they turn the ball over almost more than anybody. I watched plenty of their games and they turn the ball over all the time. And I think we could really thrive on that with our zone defense against how young they are. They're going to be shocked when they see it right away. It's one thing. Yes, they got time to prepare. I get it, completely. But nobody knows exactly how the zone works. That's why the zone works. So I really think them seeing it at the beginning is going to be tough, and it's going to be important for Oakland to get off to a fast start. If we get off to a fast start, you never know. And if we're hitting our shots, then it's scary because Kentucky needs this to be a 10-point win, a 20-point win in order for this to be a completely Kentucky win because Oakland's 8-1 in games decided with I think like 5 points, it was maybe 4 points, something like that. But we've been a very good team at closing games. So I think it's definitely going to be a more interesting game than a lot of people think. You can call me biased. I really don't care, but I think it's going to be a great game. And of course I'm picking us there. So, I got to pick us, but I think I don't mind having Kentucky. I really don't because like a team like Creighton with a very talented 7-1 guy, that's not where we want. These 7-footers that they got, they're young. They're very young. They could get into foul trouble. So I'm seeing this as a kind of favorable matchup. Like I kind of like it. But again, Kentucky's super talented. They're really, really good, and it's just going to be fun. Like it's going to be a great experience. I'm excited for this.
100%, man. It's going to be a really fun game. I totally agree with all the points you just made. I think that, Oakland's got everything they need to get it done. Let's go do it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. So we're talking about the South region. So talk to me about who you see coming out of this region. Okay. So we talked about Kentucky a lot. We talked about Duke. We talked a little bit about that Texas Tech. We didn't talk about Marquette too much. If you want to touch on them a little bit, go ahead. But talk to me about what you see coming out of this region.
Yeah, this region I have pretty basic because I think there's going to be a little element of, beating each other up, meaning that there's going to be upsets where we don't see it happening. There's going to be teams taking out, teams that are gearing up to beat Houston. So I actually do have Houston coming out of this region. I have Houston versus Marquette in the Elite Eight. Very simple 1-2. I don't think there's going to be many surprises. In the middle, I think it's going to be very interesting. But once we get down to it, I think it's going to be left with Houston and Marquette in some favorable matchups, maybe against like a Wisconsin and a Florida or something like that in order to get there. And I like Houston coming out of this one.
Yeah, no, I mean, I pretty much agree. I think Florida is a little bit of a scary team. I also didn't like that they went off in the SEC tournament. Like I would have picked them to go further if they lost earlier. It's
Right.
just the truth because they would have sat at like a 10 seed and been a little more scary. You
Yeah.
know, I loved watching Florida throughout the year. I'm going to pick them in the first round, but just Marquette. It makes it a little scary. I'm I'm just gonna go with Houston because like probably my gut would tell me just to not my gut, but my head would tell me just to pick Oakland. But I'm just gonna go with Houston and not say my other Elite Eight team because it's Oakland. But go with Houston in the Final Four. And I think it's going to be crazy. I really don't know what's going to happen. Like, I feel like that Duke Houston game in the Sweet 16 is going to be crazy. Like, that's going to be back and forth, physical bloodbath. But the thing is with this Houston team that I flat out love is that Jamal Sheed is a real player. He is so, so good. And having that X factor in March Madness is what it's all about, man. So I really think Houston's going to be scary and it's going to be a fun region there. I'm excited to see that one.
Agreed. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we're going to take a little bit of a break, and then we're going to go through the other two regions, talk about who we think's coming out of those, and then we'll give you some Final Four picks.
Hello, hello. This is Giovanni Mosheri. You might have heard me a couple times on Jake's Takes. I am the sports media director of Oakland University's campus radio station, WXOU, and I've been the host for about 2 years of a weekly sports show called The Jomo Show, where we cover all of Oakland University athletics, including a weekly update on scores and highlights, as well as interviews with athletes or those otherwise involved in athletics. You can listen to The Jomo Show live on WXOU Thursdays at 6, or you can tune in to me afterwards on Spotify. It's The Jomo Show.
All right. Welcome back into the show. And let's keep going. Okay. We're on the West region right now. This is North Carolina's bracket. And this one's another interesting one. You got a lot of very good teams. A lot of teams we talked about. We didn't talk about Carolina as much on the last podcast, but we talked about teams like Baylor. You loved Baylor to start the year. I talked about Arizona, how much I like them going into it. So it's got some teams that could make runs. We talked about Alabama. We had some mixed opinions on Alabama too. So we talked about a lot of these teams. What game stands out? What first round matchup? What team? What do you got for me in this region?
Yeah, I think that the battle of the MSUs is probably the one that's going to be most exciting. First game of the tournament, MSU probably a little high at a 9 seed, Michigan State being, because that's a team that we thought was going to be maybe a play-in team when we saw the bubble watch, played all the way up into a 9 with their Big Ten tournament wins. I still think they might be a little overhyped, but getting Mississippi State might be even a favorable matchup for this team because they have 4 bigs that they can throw against Mississippi State. So that one's going to be super fun, going to be a great way to kick it off. I probably have Mississippi State getting the edge there, which some listeners might not like, but just think that they have been a little more consistent than the Spartans. But what do you got? What are you looking at?
For this one, it's one team that I feel like is gonna scare a lot of people, and that's St. Mary's. St. Mary's is a team that a lot of people just don't give enough credit, and a lot of people like Grand Canyon as one of their favorite upsets. If I'm St. Mary's, I'm treating that as the biggest slight in the world because you went at it with Gonzaga all year, and everybody in that tournament thought Gonzaga was winning. Gonzaga's got it back. They got the flow back. They totally dismantled them in that game, and they play great defense. I love Ryan Bennett. He's awesome, and I really think this team is going to be flat out scary. I actually have them in my suite. Actually, I have them in my Elite Eight. I think they can make that type of run and are flat out scary because St. Mary's, the thing is they defend. And we talk about on this podcast, we've talked about all the time, how important it is to both be a great offensive team and be a great defensive team. Bennett's teams always are near the top in defense, always. And this team is one of those teams that I flat out love with St. Mary's, and I just don't think they get enough credit. So this is a team I'm really keeping an eye on, and I think this Grand Canyon matchup is going to be a lot. It stinks that it's 10:05 p.m., I'd like to get a little sleep, but, I'm definitely going to be watching that game, and I'm excited to see if St. Mary's can live up to the hype I'm giving them.
Totally agree. I think I have the winner of UNC St. Mary's in my Final Four, even though which is crazy because Baylor and Arizona are 2 of our favorite teams from past talks. But I agree. St. Mary's is actually here, to stay. They've kind of asserted their dominance in that West Coast Conference, and like you said, they defend. They do everything you need in March. They're going to give UNC problems. I have UNC getting in the edge there to my Elite Eight, but I totally agree with you out of there. The one I want to highlight in this kind of upper part of the West is your underrated versus overrated, Alabama versus Charleston. Who do you have there?
Yeah. I love that matchup. I love it. It was the first game I wrote down when I was looking at these tournaments, and it's because of the fact that I love Charleston. They were my team in that last podcast, and I was just like, okay, it's 2 teams that like to light it up from 3. All they do is shoot threes, so it's going to be the most fun game to watch, I think. And I think Charleston has the best chance to just win that because they're one of those teams that actually could keep up with Alabama in the 3-point line. And they got some great guards, Reggie Smith. I think it's Ricci. I'm not sure, but he's averaging 12.8 points per game. He's sixth in the country in 3-pointers made. He's definitely going to be the guy to watch. He's their main guard there. I really think Charleston is just a really scary team. I'm happy they made the tournament. I'm happy they're back, and they're always up there in shooting. So the fact of the matter is even if they don't win this game, there might be like 25 threes between the two of these teams in the first half. Like, these guys can freaking shoot it. No way it's 25 in the first half, but I'm just saying, like, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be fireworks no matter what. It's a game to watch 100%. And I think it'll be the most fun game in the first round, 100%.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that one's going to be excellent. All right, looking at the bottom half, I have Baylor just because I'm sticking with them from that initial pod. I
Yeah.
think that there are definitely things that will play to their advantage in these matchups. I mean, it's going to be tough even to get out of that first couple of weekends with a couple upset heavy teams in Colgate, New Mexico, and Clemson.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think that they're guard heavy, they're guard dependent, and that's what Arizona, their likely foe, has been all about this year. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just going to play well, right? They have two guards, Jacoby Walter and Ray J. Dennis, that have been playing outstanding. They're going to be able to contain Caleb Love in that, potential Sweet 16 matchup. I
Yeah.
like Baylor a lot. I know you probably have Arizona, so I'd love to hear your thoughts. But I think Baylor UNC is where this one's headed.
Yeah, no, I actually do have Baylor. You kind of talked me into them, and it was when we were trying to figure out who we wanted to play at the 3 seed. And the thing is Baylor's a really tough scout. It's just the truth. And that's why it was shocking to me when Michigan State did what they did to Baylor earlier in the season. And it's because Baylor plays a lot of zone too. They run a little matchup kind of 1-3-1 type thing that really works out for them. They
Yeah.
do a great job. I mean, I think they run about like 80% of their possessions in zone, which it kind of shocked me. Like, I realized they played a lot of zone, but it's kind of crazy this year how much they're doing it. And I think Scott Drew is just a fantastic coach. He puts people in the right spots, and they're a scary team. The Big 12 is just stacked. We've talked about it all year. They're flat out stacked. And I agree with you. I think Baylor's just a little bit better than Arizona. I wasn't like Caleb Love had a great year, but I feel like I trust the Baylor guys more than I trust Arizona to make it further. And I actually have Baylor going to my Final Four. I have them over St. Mary's in that region. Would you agree with me there? Do you think you have Baylor too?
I would agree. I had Baylor, St. Mary, and UNC kind of all rotating that Final Four spot. Another reason I was like kind of dogging Arizona was just because of who they had to get through to get here. I
Yeah.
think Long Beach State is not a tough or not an easy matchup to play.
Uh-huh.
They've beaten Power Five teams this year. Not the best 15 seed, but definitely one that's tough. And then you have Dayton or Nevada. Definitely the
Yeah.
7-10 matchup that I fear
Yeah.
the most, right? Dayton
Yep.
having to go to Utah to play Nevada might be tough for them, but like we said, Deron Holmes is a guy that in March could take
He's
his
a
team
monster.
far. Nevada as a team, Steve Alford's team has played excellent, right? That's going
Yeah.
to be tough for Arizona. So they're going to have to go through those two teams just to get to Baylor, not to mention Baylor having, the route of possibly Colgate in New Mexico. Great teams, but maybe not shaking up as much as Arizona is. That's why I have Baylor kind of walking into that one. I have UNC over Baylor for mine, but I think it could be a
Okay.
real toss up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, with me, it's just UNC. And I go back to the UNC. I actually have them losing second round to Michigan State. And I just think always one of those 1 seeds go down early. And UNC's, to me, is just the team that feels like it would happen to. And, you got to just pick one seed to take away. These 1 seeds are great. They're fantastic teams. But at the end of the day, it's one game. So, like, I don't know who it would be. It's normally Houston, but, like, I don't really like the 8-9 matchup there. Who would it be? Let me see.
Nebraska and A&M.
Nebraska A&M. I just I don't think they're talented enough to be able to do that to a team like Houston. I feel like Houston will be able to bully them and be able to get past that. And that happened to them last year, them losing early. And it's like they're here to stay. North Carolina here sitting at that 1 seed. I have them playing against Michigan State, and I feel like Michigan State would be hot and ready to go. And they do a great job of preparing. I mean, their preparation against us was absolutely ridiculous. They were ready for all of our plays. They were sensational. They do a great job of prep. I talked about how ridiculous their prep was against a team like Baylor. I feel like Baylor and us two teams that play a lot of zone, that's the hardest to prepare for. And they did a fantastic job there. That's why I have so much respect for State, and that's why they win in March. They're so good at that. So that's why I think it would be tough for North Carolina to get past that. And then I think State would run into a team like St. Mary's that's feeling themselves. St. Mary's would win that. And then Baylor St. Mary's would be a back and forth game, but I just think Baylor would be a little too much. That's my take kind of on the region. I like where you're headed on North Carolina. I feel like you've watched North Carolina a little more than me. So if you're trying to talk me into North Carolina, how would you do that?
Yeah, I think that key players in March are the things that we remember, right? That we take away at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And North Carolina's full of those, right? These are guys that probably won't be back next year. They're leaving it all on the line. RJ Davis could easily average the most points in this tournament, and he's probably the
Yeah.
least talked about in terms of, best players on the one seed, even best guards on the one seeds out there. Armando Bacot, people get bored when they hear his name because it's the fifth year in a row, but he's has the most double doubles in ACC history, right? Like he is someone that could lead a team through these grudge matches against Howard, against Michigan State, ones that might not be high scoring, but you need your big guy to perform. He will do that for you, right? So him combined with RJ Davis, who's had a bit of a resurgence since Caleb Love left his backcourt, I think that's the main reason this team will get there. Honestly, the way they played against NC State definitely scared me. I could see them losing early, right? It makes
Yeah.
sense that this region is our messiest because I really don't know who will come out of it. What I thought, though, is that if I switched North Carolina with Arizona or Tennessee, right, if I gave North Carolina that 2 seed a lot of people thought they were going to have, I'd probably pick them to the Final Four, right?
Yeah.
This is, they're a team that is into 1 seed because they kind of overplayed in February and March. People might see that as a negative. I see it as they're just ready to go. They have that experience. They've done it before. They've gotten to a final. Why not again this year? I like North Carolina.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I like that. All right, so let's move into the last one. Okay, we got the Midwest. This is Purdue's region. Talk to me about these first round matchups. I'm looking at these, and which one kind of stands out to you for this Midwest region?
Yeah, I think this is the one where the 5-12 makes the most sense to me. I think McNeese
Okay.
over Gonzaga. The 5-12 is always the most fun to pick, and I think that there's upset potential across the board, right? James Madison, we talked about it a little bit, but
Yeah.
McNeese actually put in the work this year, right? They went and got a top 20 coach in the country. They brought in recruits, brought in the transfer portal, took care of business with 30 wins on the season. Southland Conference isn't the best, right? They had some lapses in that scheduling, but that's really no fault of their own. They took care of every single opponent that they needed to, including some Power 5 teams. So Gonzaga, maybe a little low for 5 seed past years, high because they really weren't even expected to be in, that top 6 seed conversation this year.
Yeah.
Good for them for honestly getting there. Hard to pick against them in March, but I think McNeese is my probably favorite team to watch. Going to be a lot of fun in terms of upsets in this one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at Gonzaga, McNeese, and I'm looking at Kansas, Sanford. Like two really close games, no matter what. I actually didn't pick the upset in either one, but I do feel like that these are two teams that could scare the crap out of the others, and that's because Gonzaga and Kansas. Like if you're Kansas, you would like to walk in with your stars healthy. Right now, we're not sure. We don't know. So
Yep.
that's why I feel like Sanford could definitely give them a game because even if they're both healthy, it's their first game back. They got to get used to it. They got to get back into playing. And then with Gonzaga, McNeese, like McNeese is just a scary 12 seed, like you were talking about. I think I'm just a little higher on Gonzaga. I really like them this year. I like Nemhard a lot. He's been a little down this year. His 3-point percentage is down to like 32%. Graham Ike, I think, is the forwards name, forward or center, whatever he plays, but he's averaging 16.5 points, 7.2 rebounds, 60% field goal percentage. He's their leading scorer. He's been great for them.
Yep.
So I think these two guys could have great games and really make it tough for McNeese. McNeese, pretty solid shooting team, 38.8% from 3. So I think definitely they're a popular upset pick, and I think a lot of people should do it. I just trust Mark Few. I really do. I think Mark Few is going to have them ready to go, and I think Gonzaga is going to be able to sneak out of that one. And I actually have Gonzaga over Kansas in the next round too. So I think that I agree with you in the fact that those two are probably like the most interesting matchups. But I'm also looking at your Oregon Ducks like, hey, they might be a team that's scary. So talk to me about Oregon. You talked about them. I think it was our preview. you talked about them a little bit. So talk to me about Oregon and talk to me about the bottom half of the bracket too.
Yeah, I had Oregon and Baylor as teams like to watch for at the beginning of this year, just because I knew they were probably not going to be competing for those 1-2 spots in their conference. But that doesn't mean you should count them out when it comes to this time, right? March Madness. They got a great draw. I won't lie. I think that Oregon is playing really well. They won the Pac-12. They
Yeah.
beat Arizona, which a team that is playing at a Final Four level, and they took it to them. So the interesting thing about Oregon is that their coach, Dan Allman, has never lost in the first round of an NCAA tournament, which seems crazy
That's
because he's
crazy.
been there for so long. But when you think about it, that's a lot of upsets that you've had to overcome. And that's a lot of time when you've had to be the upsetter, just like they are now, right? South Carolina's a really hot team. I think I actually have South Carolina winning this one. But
Okay.
if I had to talk you into a 6-11 matchup to watch that's going to be entertaining from start to finish, it's going to be South Carolina, Oregon.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I bought right into Oregon, man. Like I'm all in. I actually have them over Creighton in the second round. Like Creighton's another team that, I flat out love and I think they're really, really good. But Oregon's a team that could just get really hot and scare some people, and you see 11 seeds be able to do that. And I like the draws they got, and I feel like they could be flat out scary. And then also, like, even in the next round, like, I just think Tennessee is just so good, and they're hungry in this section. Like they saw the SEC and was like, the SEC tournament was like, what happened to us? So I feel like Connect and Ziegler and all those guys are going to be really, really ready to play. And I feel like they're getting out of that bottom section no matter what, waiting in the Elite Eight for whoever shows up. And I actually have Tennessee coming out of this whole bracket. Like I think they're a crazy team, and I'm really excited to see them play. And I feel like it's a very favorable bracket for them. We didn't touch on Purdue really too much. So talk to me about the top section and how far you kind of see Purdue going. Can they overcome the stuff from March from last year?
Yeah, I think that Purdue was probably the top seed going in for a lot of people, mid-February. So the fact
Yeah.
that they're sitting here as probably the third best one seed in terms of bracket alignment is kind of interesting. That said, I think they have the easiest path to the Elite Eight. I think that Gonzaga is absolutely a weaker five just because of how well they've played in a weak conference. Kansas is an injured four. I have Purdue going to the Elite Eight pretty handily. I actually have
Okay.
them playing McNeese in the Sweet 16. So I have
Wow.
Purdue
Okay.
going to the Elite Eight. What's going to happen then is you'll get, Purdue, a team that historically can't win that big one, can't get to the Final Four against a very, very hungry team from the bottom that could
Yeah.
come out of anywhere. South Carolina, Oregon, even Tennessee, probably, right? Like those teams are going to be gunning for that Final Four spot. They know that Purdue typically likes to lapse in that, second weekend. They're going to want to be the team to do it. I
Yeah.
think that Purdue's praying that Tennessee is not the team they play. I think that's the worst matchup for them. They've got guards like Ziegler that can really
Yeah.
harass, a couple beat up point guards for Purdue. They also have shooting that can bring Zach Edey out of the paint. So
Yeah.
that's probably the matchup they don't want to see. Interestingly enough, at the bottom of this one, I have Creighton losing first round to Akron, which is
Wow.
a upset that I think no one is
Wow.
picking. I think that
That's
one,
crazy.
looking at when it's played, it's the third game of the day on Thursday. I think it's
Yeah.
going to break everyone's bracket. Akron probably even shouldn't be in there because of Kent State's fouling at the end of that
Yep.
MAC championship
True.
game.
True.
But Akron is a team that has been so slept on in the year, got beat up in the MAC, but won enough games to get that high seed. I think Akron over Creighton would be something that out of left field that would be a classic March Madness buster and make it a little bit easier for Tennessee to sneak in there. So it could be very easy to go chalk here. I think Purdue, Tennessee makes sense, however they get there, whether it's Oregon, Texas, Virginia, Colorado, like whoever the Tennessee has to go through. I think it's very easy to put them there. I actually have South Carolina going to the Final Four out of this bracket, which is, I know,
Wow.
absolutely wild because we have
Wow.
not talked
Okay.
about them yet. But I was looking at it and I thought, okay, like who would be, like you said, who's the one seed to lose early? Who would be the 4 through 9 seed to make it to the Final Four, right? I'm not saying they have to win it all, but
Yeah.
South Carolina and what they've done with this new coach in their first year, being third in that SEC conference is something that, like, I think no one expected. And the
Yeah.
fact that you could get Tennessee as your Sweet 16 matchup plays super well for them because this is
Yeah.
a team
I
they've
agree.
played a couple times and they have scouted, and a
I
team that
agree.
they've seen get beat handily in the first round of the SEC tournament, right? I think Tennessee was supposed to walk away with the SEC, and they lost, in a horrifying fashion to start. So
Yep.
I like South Carolina to kind of be that Cinderella team to upset both Tennessee and Purdue and make it to the Final
Wow.
Four.
I kind of like that, man. I kind of like that. I feel like whoever comes out of that Oregon South Carolina game, I feel like will be Creighton. And you have Akron out of that section, which I like because Akron was in the Caymans with us, and there's a lot of Cayman Island teams that are in this tournament. There's 4 of them. It's
Right.
Akron, us, Utah State, and Drake. All 4 of these teams made it, and they were all really, really talented. The thing is with Akron, I kind of knew they'd come out of the MAC the whole year. They were clearly the best team like to start, and then Toledo
Yep.
took it away from them the last second. So I picked them to make it to the tournament. I picked them out of the MAC, and Akron's just been impressive to me. They've always been clearly that best team in the MAC. The thing that scares me about them and why I didn't pick them is the Horizon League actually ranks better than the MAC for the first time in like 5 years. And that just means that the MAC's down this year, and it's not like to where it should be. So thinking about it that way and being like, okay, they barely won this conference and kind of got beat up in it. I just couldn't get over the hump. And I mean, we didn't want to play Creighton. Like Creighton wouldn't have been a good matchup for us. At least I didn't. I mean, maybe the players did, but like I just didn't think it would be a great matchup for us because of a great 7-footer and all the guys that they got there. So looking at it that way, I just feel like it's a tough matchup for them and not sure if they could pull it out. I'm rooting for them, but we'll see there. I like that you picked them though, because I don't think anybody's going to pick them.
Definitely. I think that honestly, and you can, chalk this up to just like wishful thinking, when they play factors in so well for you because I've been there. I've
Yeah.
won those first 2 games of March Madness, and here it is 3 versus 14, Creighton versus Akron. Creighton, a team that should easily win this game. I think they're going to drop it. I think Akron knows that people aren't picking them, and they've got a coach that's led a couple teams to success. Like he's going to get them prepared. It's going to be a lot of fun, and they got the Cayman Islands battle tested.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No, I would love it. I would love it flat out. But I'm going to go to the other Cayman Islands team and blow your mind. And with Utah State, I think they're going to beat TCU. And then I think they're going to go to Purdue and beat them. Utah State
Wow.
is for real, dude. And Danny Sprinkle has done an unbelievable job there and really made this team elite. They lost early, but I mean, they were clearly the best team in that conference throughout the whole year and were just sensational. And I don't mind it when teams lost early. I talked about it earlier. It means they're hungry going into this. And I think TCU is a battle-tested team, and that's going to be a hard-fought win for them. And then Purdue's not going to see what's coming. We talked about the guards are injured. Braden Smith injured. Braden Smith has to be healthy for Purdue to make a run. So I feel like Purdue will be a little on edge and not ready for it. And Utah State's going to come out hungry, physical, and I feel like they're going to come out and shock the world, man, and beat Purdue right there and really make a run. Like I'm super excited for Utah State. I talked about it on the podcast earlier, but they just dominated when they were in the Caymans, just flat out dominated. They beat Stephen F. Austin in that championship game by 30 points. And I was like, okay, this team is going to be for real. And they were ranked all year, and then they fell to 8. Like, they're better than an 8 seed. They're going to be a really scary 8 seed for Purdue coming out. And I mean, I was going to pick Purdue far because everybody's like, I think
Same.
a lot of people will because of that 16 seed last year and Virginia did that stuff. But Purdue's injured here. Braden Smith, we're not sure what it's going to be. I feel like they might start out slow with the 16 seed, but get it done this time. And then it feels like the monkey's off your back. But then you got Utah State. And I feel like Utah State's going to be that team that shocks them. I have Utah State going to the Elite 8 and then losing to Tennessee. So that's it.
I
That's
like
my
it.
sleeper. You like that one?
I
Like that one?
do. I do. No, that's great. I think again, this is a lot like the West. It's going to be messy. We're not going to know. Purdue is a team that has fallen as a 1 seed before. They're very likely to do it again. I agreed. I had Purdue before the brackets came out. Once I saw it, I just don't think they're going to make it through every single person. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah, yeah. So you had South Carolina in that one, and I had Tennessee. So let's just name our final fours and talk about like who we think's coming out. So my final four was UConn, Baylor, as the first matchup, and then Houston and Tennessee as the second matchup. What was your Final Four? Just so
Yeah,
we
I had UConn and UNC playing each
okay,
other, and then Houston and South Carolina. So I have 3 1 seeds, which I know is definitely a little chalk, might not even be likely with past years, but I think UNC is getting treated like a 2 or 3, and they're gonna have a couple upset wins as a 1 seed to
got
get
you.
them to
Yeah,
UConn. And then I'll name my final. You can obviously hold yours, but I have North Carolina versus Houston in the final.
North
I think
Carolina,
that
Houston. Okay,
UConn's going to be walk into that first Final Four game. They're not really going to see UNC coming. Hubert Davis has won this game before, right? He's not a new coach. He's beaten Duke on this stage. He's going to be able to take it to UConn. I think that RJ Davis is going to be the reason. And then they're going to face Houston. I actually have Houston winning it all this year.
Houston winning it all. I like it. I like it. Talk to me about if Houston were to play North Carolina in the final. What would be the matchups that you would look at, and like why do you think Houston would have that edge and be able to win that game?
Yeah, I think that, obviously it's going to be high scoring.
Yeah,
Just the way these two teams play, there's going to be a lot of high percentage shots taken, trying to get the ball in the paint. They have guards that attack. The floaters are very important. I like LJ Cryer, obviously, versus RJ Davis. Like it's already written. Like that's a news title right there, right? LJ versus RJ. That's like my final matchup. This Houston team has been building for this for since I left at Michigan, right? Like I remember
yeah,
when we were gearing up for this tournament and we had to go through. It was LSU with obviously Will Wade, who's now at Miami State, a team that I have, and then we had to go through Florida State, a team that had Scotty Barnes, right?
yeah,
And then we had to face that UCLA team that came out of nowhere, right? That
yeah.
entire time we're scouting for that Final Four for those matchups potentially. Houston is the one we didn't want to see. They had
Okay.
guards that I believe even might have been injured that year, or was it the next year? But they always seem to have 2 guards that pick up the load and average that 15 points a
It's
game, get
true.
the whole
It's
team
true.
involved. And that was back when they were in the American, right? Their
Yeah,
first year in the Big 12, people didn't really know how they were going to do. They thought, okay, maybe they'll run into quote unquote the best conference and finally get beat up. They didn't. They won 31 games again. Sorry, 30 games. They won the Big 12 outright by a couple, right? And
yep,
people
yep.
say Kansas was down, Iowa State kind of came out of nowhere, Texas Tech. It's because Houston knew what they were doing when they entered this conference, right? They knew that
True.
they were going to have the same identity. Their coach is obviously an NCAA legend. I think it's finally time that he cuts down the banners as champion with Houston, and that's why I have them there.
Yeah, I like that. I like that completely. I am not going to give away my picks yet. I'm going to save it for the Wednesday podcast. We got part 1 and part 2 coming out. March Madness Extravaganza, year 2, man. We're on year 2 of this. So, Asher, I really appreciate you coming on. We'll be in Florida during some of it. I mean, I'm not sure if I'll be there depending on how far Oakland makes it. You never know. You never know. But we will definitely do a podcast as it continues, so you'll be back. But Asher, I really appreciate you coming on, man. This has been a lot of fun.
100%, man. I'm excited watching basketball.
Dude, it's gonna be a blast no matter what happens. Like, I'm so excited for this tournament, and it is gonna be super, super fun. So that's gonna wrap up the show for today. Thank you guys so much for listening, watching, whatever you're doing. I really appreciate it. Go follow the channel, like, subscribe, do what you got to do to help the show out. I am really appreciative of all the support I get for it. So thank you guys. And that's going to wrap up the show, and we'll be back next time. I'll see you guys later. Peace.